The elders say that when the beaver have almost finished their feedbed and are hurrying about to put the final coats of mud on their houses, the frost will soon be here. This is the signal to begin trapping, while our canoes can still glide through the water. They also say that the beaver is the center of the natural world. The site of a beaver colony forms a meeting place and crossroads for other fur bearers, such as wolf, lynx, muskrat, otter, and mink. The changes beaver make to their environment also benefit fish, birds, and big game. The flesh of the beaver is a valuable source of food and bait for the trapping season. For these reasons and many others, I have the greatest respect for the beaver. The beaver is a hard worker. It certainly deserves the name nature's engineer. I have sometimes watched beaver at work in large deciduous forests, but they are very discreet by nature. Sometimes they can be seen toiling away at sunrise or dusk, but usually they come out only at night. Beaver avoid places where the water is too polluted, too deep, or too rapid. They generally choose sites in slow, meandering streams and creeks, bordered by shrubs and trembling aspen. It's easy to find the beaver's runways by looking for the slide-like furrows worn in the earth. Close to their houses, beaver lay aside a store of food that will enable them to survive the winter when they are imprisoned by the ice-covered pond. Beaver eat twigs and bark. By far their favorite food is trembling aspen. This is good to remember, for you will often use it as bait. However, they won't turn up their noses at cherry, birch, or willow. Without a doubt, the beaver's masterpiece is his dam. When a beaver constructs a dike to form a pond, it is acting on instinct. This instinct directs it to flood part of the forest so it will be easier to fell trees and obtain a food supply for the cold winter months. But the construction of these masterpieces can cause problems, including the occasional flooding of roads and railways. I myself find the dams very useful, since they make it easy for me to locate beaver colonies on my land. As well, a number of traps for beaver can be set at the dam site. Notice the small opening in the dam. This is called the spillway or slide, because the beaver regularly uses it to get from one side of the dam to the other. It's a perfect site for a trap. These trappers are using the drowning system for this trap. This system can be used to capture all semi-aquatic animals. The place where the trap will rest must be prepared to make sure it remains firm when the beaver puts its weight on it. Use a number 4 Victor long spring trap for beaver. The pan is perfectly positioned level with the jaws. Make sure the trap is covered by 8 centimeters of water and that the jaws are facing parallel in the same direction as the current so that they grip the animal firmly when they close. Place it slightly to the right of the center of the spillway. Place 1 or 2 small dry sticks on either side and 1 in front to provide natural guideposts for the beaver. Do not use too many, or they will snag everything that floats down the stream and the trap will become useless. Everyone knows that trappers are early birds. The moon is a familiar part of their landscape. It accompanies them in the morning as they set their first traps. Before using the drowning system to set a trap, make sure there's enough water to submerge the animals. In the case of beaver, at least 120 centimeters are required. To avoid capturing other, less desirable species, such as muskrat, which use the same routes, Some trappers insert a small flexible branch under the trigger to prevent the trap from closing unless a heavy enough creature, a beaver or the occasional otter, pushes against the trigger. Here are the rest of the instructions. Fasten some wire to the pointed end of a well-sharpened pole. Drive the pole into the bottom of the stream a good distance from the bank. This pole acts as an anchor. The wire should be long enough to reach the bank and must be stretched taut. Place a dry stake next to the spillway and near the trap. You'll fasten the wire to this stake. Then insert the wire into a slide lock which is attached to the second or third link of the chain. When the beaver is caught in the trap, it will instinctively dive to the side of the dam where the water is deepest. The trap will drag the animal down to the end of the pole planted at the bottom of the water. When the animal reaches the bottom, the slide lock will jam. The beaver will not be able to return to the surface and will soon die from lack of oxygen. If you have had to weaken the dam at all, keep in mind that the water level will decrease at that point. Make sure that the trap is operating correctly and that the slide lock runs freely down the wire but will not come back up. Sometimes, when I don't have all the necessary ingredients, I have to change the recipe a bit. Occasionally, instead of using a pole, I will use a rock as an anchor. Like this trapper, I fasten it very securely to the wire and throw it a few meters from the bank. The rock must be a fair size, at least 15 kilograms, so the beaver won't be able to return to the surface of the water. Oh, before throwing the rock into the water, make sure you're holding onto one end of the wire and that it's long enough to reach the bank. This precaution will save you having to dive into the water after the rock and your roll of wire. The following steps are identical to those used in setting the drowning trap with a pole, which we just saw, and gave the same results. Fasten the anchor wire stretched taut to a dry stake near the water's edge. To be most effective, the wire should not be above the water level. As winter approaches, it's easy to predict the beaver's comings and goings around the dam, since it carries out a daily inspection. So plan your sights accordingly. Our trappers are setting a second trap near the dam. This time, they're using a 330 Canada trap. You can use a 330 or 280 to trap beaver. Either model is powerful enough. Before positioning the log, use your foot to dig a small channel, the width of the trap, in the stream bed. Since the beaver is very nearsighted, it follows paths worn in the bottom of the stream. This channel will lead it right to the trap. The channel should be about 60 centimeters deep. I myself dig as deep as the height of my boots will allow. At the same time, you can remove anything that might interfere with the trap's operation. Use dry sticks to anchor the log, sliding them through each of the trap springs. The trap must be placed at least 60 centimeters from the dam. Position it right in the middle of the channel you've dug with your foot and a few centimeters off the bottom. I often use this technique because it remains effective long after the first autumn frost. Even if ice forms on the surface of the pond, an eddy of water between the log and the dam prevents ice from forming here as winter goes on. We haven't been able to find fault with our trapper yet. He's careful to remove the safety hooks from the trap and uses wire to attach the chain securely to a stake near the water's edge. If you happen to run into more suspicious beaver, use 2 forked branches to hold the log in position. The site will look more natural if you arrange a little grass on top of the log. Now, the beaver will never know you've been there.
What we'll be doing here is a channel set for both beaver and otter. We have here an ideal situation where the animals have been using the trail, the channel and the trail to go up to the upper pond. There's some major points to consider before making this set. One is where in the channel you want to make this set, and that's very important because what you attempt to do and you want to do is to set where the animal, once caught, will be in sufficient water to remain submerged. We have here an ideal situation to set the trap. We're going to take a pole across, identify where the trap is going to be located, and then take the pole out and put the 3 nails as a trap holder. Okay, so in this case here, the channel is not too wide. It is a good wise use to use a 280 Connie bear in this position here. So we'll get the pole. The idea is to put the pole in is to mark on the pole where you're going to be putting your Connie bear on that pole. Okay, there. Now we'll remove the pole. Bring it over here. And we're going to be using 3 nails as a trap holder. The reason for the nails as a holder because it's very practical, and also when the trap is sprung, the trap releases itself from the pole and the animal can get into deeper water and remain submerged. So we have identified here where the nails are going to go on the other side. The nails to be used should be anywhere from 2.5 to 3 inch, preferably. An advantage in using this system is that a trapper can use a bigger pole. He doesn't have to go choose a chosen pole to put through the springs. This enables him to use a big pole as long as he can move it. Okay, so we have established where it goes in the pole. Trapper drives the nails in. You can see they're offset. There's 2 on this side and there's 1 on this side. Because when I put the trap on there, it'll bite on these nails and they become the trap holder. We have selected the trap as mentioned. In this case we could use a 280 Connie Bear. The idea that the trapper should recognize is that when the trap is being placed on the nails, it grabs on the nails. And then the nail becomes the trap holder. First thing we do, put the safety gripper on. And that will stay on until the trap is ready to be put in position. Also, the safety hooks should be positioned that they are stay in position where they can protect you from the trap from opening. Okay. We have our trap on the pole, retained by the nails. What we do is we put a very long wire, 6 to 8 feet, whatever you require. When the animal gets caught, the trap is released from the pole, and the animal can then get into deeper water, and as I mentioned, remain submerged. Okay, so we'll tie this to the pole. Before placing the trap in position, your next step is to set the trigger. What the trapper wants to do is to set the trigger to minimize the entrance in the trap, whereby an otter comes through, it swims fast, has a slim body, and it will get caught. If you separate these wires too much, you create an entrance there where it could dive under and go right through the trap. Very important to have these triggers set properly. Safety hook still on. We didn't move. Make sure the wire is all under. Then you remove the safety gripper. Safety hook first, safety gripper. Safety hook I remove. Very important, don't forget the safety hooks on. Trap is then placed in the dead center of the channel. Now you notice the trap has been tied to the pole. It's also important that the pole be tied to something. So we'll put a piece of wire on the pole, which will stay on the pole, and it will, when you come back to check your trap, it will be stationed on the pole. A stake has been driven here, right here, as you can see. Solid stake. When you lower your pole in, take the wire, and make a couple of turns, and then keep everything natural. Same with the trap. You don't need to build a fort. Handful of grass. Handful of grass. Animals come swimming. It sees the opening in the center, and then we'll dive under the pole, cut in the trap, trap releases, and it goes down. I will lift the pole just to show. That's all you need, natural as possible. another big one. Hey, they're a big one. What we're going to be doing here is a beaver trail set, but in this case here we're going to be using a lure to draw the beaver in through our trap. We have a good situation here. As you can see, the trail coming in, and we're going to be using a type conibear trap, a 330 trap, which is fairly large in size, and it gives us a bit more chance to have the beaver travel through the trap. We'll be locating the trap in this area here. We have enough water to half submerge our trap, and we will be using natural sticks to hold the trap in position. As mentioned, this is a 330 type trap, and if you notice we have the safety gripper on, and it'll stay on until we're done with the set. It's a very simple but very efficient set. At this time, the trap is ready to be put in position. We're going to be using the trap set in this position with the triggers coming from the bottom. We have already dug a little trench for the dog to sit in on the bottom. And now the safety hooks can be removed, but the safety gripper stays on. The gripper will stay on until we're all done in this particular set. Trap is positioned where we want it with a little channel, and it's going to be held in position with natural little stick, which will allow the trap to be movable once the beaver is caught. Okay, once we've done this, we want to keep everything natural. We have our little stick here, and our little stick there as strap holder. We're going to put some grass here. A little bit of grass on this side. Now, before we take the safety gripper off, we're going to secure this trap. And we're going to tie it with a long wire. In this case, we have about 8 feet of wire or more. We're going to tie it as far off as we can. So again, the beaver, once it gets caught, the trap will move out of there, and then struggling, the beaver gets into deeper water and will be submerged. We're lucky in this case, we have a good pole here, natural anchor for our trap. Always secure your trap very well. Keep the wire in the water, keep everything natural. It should be noted that any trap you set in the field, the traps had to be treated and waxed before you use them. At this time, the safety gripper can be removed. The dogs are positioned, the trigger's positioned with a good strike on the beaver. And if this is an area where you have otters coming through, you can slightly reduce the entrance by putting a little stick like this. And this will force the otter to hit those triggers. Okay, I'll put these back on. Again, main thing, a natural environment. What I'm going to do now, and you should remember this, is we're going to use a lure. But never place your lure until the set is all complete, because this lure is very effective and it will draw beaver from the next pond. And if you do work with the lure first, you may get some scent on your gloves. And you're working here. The beaver comes along, he doesn't know where to go. He may hit the side of the trap, he may just come back and turn around. Now there is no scent of lure here. We're going to place the lure between 3 to 6 feet ahead, depending on the situation. In this case here, I'm going to move ahead about 4 feet and place the lure. This lure has been prepared in advance, and it's a natural lure using casters and oil sac and a bit of oil of anise, glycerine. What you do is you take a stick, preferably a stick that beavers have chewed on, and naturally the ends are frayed, kind of little gaps in it, and it will soak the lure and will retain a few pieces of lure in the gap, and the beavers will smell that for 100 yards away. We'll place the lure, in this case about 4 feet ahead, and on the side a little bit here. And we'll protect our lure a little bit with some leaves here. They'll still pick the smell from the pond. This worked very, very effectively. When he comes in swimming, he'll smell that lure. He doesn't care anymore about the trap. He wants to know what's there. That's why it's so effective and so efficient. The recipe for making your beaver lure is very simple. I want to show you here some of the ingredients we use that will make a good lure for yourself. The basic ingredient, first of all, is the beaver caster itself. Beaver caster, and you have mineral oil, which will be the base for the paste, and also anise oil. What you do is you chop the beaver caster, very, very little pieces. Some trappers elect to use a blender, but in most cases trappers will just chop in very, very fine pieces. Okay, and the normal batch you would do normally would be about 1 liter. You take the jug, you chop your beaver caster, and you put casters in and allow about 3/4 of an inch on top. That will allow you space to put the oil in. Once you've got your casters in the jug, then you take the oil sac. Take a dozen oil sacks or so, you chop the end, and you use the oil that comes from the oil sac. 2 reasons for this. One, it will help to give you a better paste, a soft paste with your lure. Also, there's a certain aroma from this that helps in attracting the beaver to the set. Once you've done that, and you've got this beaver casters, oil from about a dozen oil sacs, then you can add mineral oil. Add just sufficient enough to get a good soft paste. Once you accomplish that, you mix it very well using a stick. And finally, you add 1 ounce of oil of anise per liter up to a quart. Get that blended well together. Do this in late August, early September. Let that ferment not in the fridge, not in the freezer, just in the camp where it's cool, and it'll be ready to work for you when the fall comes. Try it. It will work for you. It works for many, many trappers.
Often, I should say most of the time, I adapt my trapping methods to the site. On the steep banks of this river, in a beaver's felling trail, I set my trap in water rather than on the ground. The site lends itself to this method, and because the weather is mild, the trap shouldn't freeze during the next few days. Like this trapper, I use 2 small stakes to position the trap. This is solid enough. The trap will be secured with a long piece of wire about 2 meters from the riverbank. This way, when the beaver springs the trap, it will fall into very deep water, safe from other predators. Notice how well the partly submerged trap blends into its surroundings. While you were watching my colleagues at work, I set a trap of my own. I just wanted to show you that I'm not just all talk. I trap too. I've decided to use a drowning set near a logging trail. The water is at least 120 centimeters deep here, and there are no obstructions to prevent the trap from sliding right to the end of the wire. The pole is driven firmly into the bottom so the beaver can't pull it up. There are many fresh signs of beaver here. The aspen trees have been cut recently. The beaver was probably here last night. Did you notice? The snow is gone from the trail. All these signs are very recent. The animal is sure to return. All I have to do is leave my trap to do its work overnight. The bait, a big piece of castor, is in place and covered with grass. The anchor wire is free of obstructions from end to end. The slide lock works properly. The trap pan is level with the jaws. It's positioned slightly below the water level, about 5 centimeters. Good. Now some small sticks to head the beaver towards the trap when it decides to climb onto the trails. It looks like the animal has been back. These tracks are fresh. One of the aspen twigs I put out yesterday has been moved and the bark has been gnawed. Maybe the beaver went around the trap. No, there it is. When the beaver felt itself caught, it dove into the water. The trap dragged it to the bottom of the stream and it was unable to return to the surface. Everything went according to plan, except for one thing. A second beaver came by and ate the bait. Judging by the size of the teeth marks on the bark, it was bigger than this one. This should be a good day. You see, the way to trap beaver in open water is crystal clear. Just remember to plan your harvest with a view to maintaining the resource for future generations. And make sure you inspect your traps as often as possible. Laws concerning trapping, methods and types of traps may differ between jurisdictions. Consult your local authorities for regulations in your region. All the trapping methods shown in this presentation have been selected and approved by the Fur Institute of Canada. However, all information is subject to change because of continuing research and constant development in new trapping methods.